any big myths that you've come across as it relates to the way that first-time home buyers are things that loan officers who don't maybe work with a lot of first-time home buyers, what is a myth perhaps that they have about working with first-time home buyers that you would like to demystify, if anything comes to mind?
Yeah, so one, I don't know if it would be a myth, but I think we underestimate how much people are, it goes alongside the trust, but people are using ChatGPT and digital tools to try to equip themselves before they have a conversation with you. And one of the stats that I thought was really interesting from this recent report that we released, the 2026 Next Gen Homebuyer Report, was 61% of millennials and Gen Z said they trusted AI as much or more than a human to help them through or getting homebuyer education. And so it's just, you think about like, okay, if someone's coming to you, they are often having done a lot of research ahead of time. And I think giving them like input, and guidance is super important, but recognizing that they're often coming to the table with some education.
That's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really, I wonder, Kristin, like if I'm a loan officer, that's a really good point that you brought up. I wonder if I wouldn't want to go to, ChatGPT or something similar and ask the questions that a first-time homebuyer would be asking to see what AI is saying about those things. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I would probably want to know what are those answers. And here's the other thing is that it also tells me we need to shift a little bit our approach probably with these young buyers, because it's, if you don't acknowledge the fact that they've educated themselves to a certain level. Now, obviously there's certain things that you want to be able to give them advice and clarification on, right? Because we know that AI is not going to give you all the answers, but it also means you have to speak to them with the thought that they already have some knowledge behind them, versus like, I'm going to talk to them like they're a fifth grader and they don't know anything. Like that could be almost demeaning, I feel like, to someone who spent a lot of time doing research, right? So don't you think that could, warrant us to change our approach a little bit and acknowledge that you might not know what I know about this industry, but you probably know a lot, and maybe even ask them questions about how much research they've done before you meet with them?
Yeah, so I actually built out this kind of trust framework that I use in doing workshops about building trust. And the first, the letter T in trust is tune in. And I always say that I think you need to, in your first conversation, because people are often extremely stressed out, they're making the biggest financial decision of their lives. They have a bunch of baggage they're carrying to the table with finances in general. But then you come, to this big moment. And if you ask them, hey, what is it that keeps you up at night about this? Like what is the thing that stresses you out the most? And you kind of start with that. You pull out what they've been looking, researching, what ChatGPT said about this thing, and then you reflect it back to them. You say, okay, I heard you say that, affordability or whatever is your biggest challenge here. They can correct you, add on to that. And then you kind of affirm them. It's like, that sounds overwhelming, like whatever it is. But you are then allowing their brain to like kind of ease out. They go out of the fight, flight, or freeze response and they go into, okay, you're hearing me. I'm safe here. I can have a real conversation. And I think that so like conversation goes so much better whenever you just start right off the bat. Let's talk about what's keeping you up here.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, I think that when I think about that, I mean, it may not have been a myth, but I think you brought up a really good point. And I think every loan officer listening to this should think about their talk tracks when they're meeting with a first-time home buyer. And if you could acknowledge, and look, I'm sure there's some that have done no research and, obviously not everybody is doing it, but you're going to have a much higher propensity for people to have, educated themselves in whatever way they felt was the right way. Some of that's going to be through TikTok and, YouTube and things like that, but some of that's going to be through AI and things like that. But to let them talk a little bit more about what they do know and then help them, clarify and round the edges and maybe take concepts they've heard and help them understand them deeper. That seems like a really quick way of building rapport and trust, like you said, Kristin. And that might not have been the same approach that we would have taken in the past. I mean, people would not have had much access to this knowledge. Now it's literally at their fingertips. And I can't imagine even myself, and I'm definitely not a millennial, just turned 49 years old. I would go through and research almost any purchase that I'm going to do. I've educated myself on ChatGPT. I've watched all the reviews on YouTube. Like, I'm ready for that conversation. And if someone dismisses the level of education that I've already brought myself to and doesn't meet me where I'm at, and then try to add clarification, go deeper, and at least edify the knowledge I have, I'm very turned off by that. And I have to imagine we have a whole generation now of people that's kind of their learning process when they get into something big like purchasing a home. And I don't know that it could be understated or overstated how important it is to your point, meet them where they're at.
That is exactly it. I want to take exactly that clip of you talking and share that in our community because that's right. I mean, people don't want to feel, they want to feel edified, they want to feel supported, and they don't want to feel dismissed. And they especially want to feel heard. So even though they've done so much research, they still are really anxious. So, one myth might be that they don't know anything. But another myth might be that they are confident, and I think that they might show up being like, I know this and this, I've done this research. That does not mean they are confident at all. And that's why going into the supportive, like, let's find out where the anxiety sits here is going to be really helpful in preventing, because a lot of people are going to ghost you and stop communication, decide to pull out for a variety of reasons, but it's really about that lack of confidence.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, I love this is a fascinating topic, and I think underrated. I'm really glad you brought that up. I had no idea that's where this would go, but to me, that's the big takeaway of the day, you guys, is thinking about that.